Hi, I'm Sarah,
And I'm Tess.
and this is the Basically Bookish Podcast.
Today, we're jumping into the third installment of our coverage of We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. If you haven't listened to our first two episodes, you might be a little bit confused. So we'll link those in the show notes, and you should definitely start there first and then meet us back here.
Today we're covering chapters 13 through 18, so buckle up because things are really getting weird.
If you're reading along with us, don't worry, we won't spoil the end of the book because we don't know it yet. So you're totally safe.
Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. We're at Basically Bookish Pod on all platforms, and we'd love to hear from you.
And I'm so excited because I feel like I just get to kind of sit back and relax this week and let you take over. So let's just go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, I was going to say I sort of run through the scary parts of the book and don't look back. So make sure I don't miss any of the details. Okay, this is a chapter that is titled Stranger. And for me, this is starting to get a little Blair Witch Project. And I'm referencing the 1999 original there. I feel like you're catching snippets of all these scary things and you're just like running around a madhouse.
Yeah, and there's a real found footage aspect of it that lends to that as well.
Eve is rushing home. The weather is changing and she's hoping to get home to get that family out before the bridge closes again. And Shiloh is following her. She comes up to the driveway and there's fresh footprints leading right over to the moving truck. So, of course, they are still there. She follows the footsteps and suddenly she sees a figure facing away in the distance. Navy green boots, blue jeans, and a white tank top.
Which, doesn't that match the description of the guy? Remember the partial police report? The guy who was wandering. Yeah.
I was wondering, I knew the navy green boots. I was thinking, was it also blue jeans and a white tank top? Yeah. Terrifying. And she's thinking to herself, in this weather, they would be just like freezing. And she's wondering to herself, is it a child or is it Jenny? They're sort of like swaying with the wind. And then all of a sudden the person stands up. And that's happened twice now where she's wondered if it was a kid and it's ended up being an adult. And they wander off into the pines. She follows them and they're sort of like weaving in and out of the pines. She can't get a good look at them. And at one point, she even wonders if the person is Charlie. They're circling around the trees even, like going in circles. And she catches around one of the corners that the person has shoulder length hair, so it can't be Charlie. They slip behind a rock and Eve follows, but the footsteps just stop, as if they disappeared. Shiloh barks at that time and she's looking at something. Eve turns to see that there's a cabin in the woods with a light on. She's drawn to it. I would just go running the opposite direction. Just running.
Just freak out about it.
Yeah.
It's not your problem.
Anything. I didn't see anything. She approaches the front of the cabin and she sees bullet holes in the open door, but there's oddly intact windows on either side of the door. At the top of it, there is another porthole window, and she was just about to turn to leave when Shiloh just bolts into the cabin. And honestly, I'm going to go back for help. Shiloh, I'll see you in a little while. I'm so sorry. I'm going to go get a bulldozer, and I'll be back to help you.
Yeah. Honestly. Yeah. And also on the front porch, somebody has carved the words old house.
Yeah. So she's standing on the stoop and there's a carving at her feet that says old house. It's dark inside and Shiloh will not come when called. She disappears into a room down at the end of the hall. And so Eve...
I'm getting anxious just like listening to you retell this.
So crazy. Against every emotion that anyone has ever had, Eve walks into the house. The house creaks, of course, and she sees a small black and white tiled kitchen. Again,
that original tile, like it's somehow linked to this house that she's living in right now.
Right. It's so unnerving. I've never thought of a tile pattern to be so unnerving. And there's a double bunk off to the side. There's a kitchen and it's sort of like really close quarters. She's halfway to where she saw Shiloh disappear when the front door slams shut, revealing light through the bullet holes. And it's apparently just the wind. But of course it is. haunted, evil wind. She opens the door at the end of the hall. I don't know how she got there. There's a small room with a rug and a worn armchair. And Shiloh is sitting near the window, apparently very happy with herself, which I feel like is just so unnerving in and of itself, that the dog would just like run into the house that it's unfamiliar with, sit on in a windowsill and just smile at you. Terrifying. Eve leashes her and turns to see that on the wall that she came in on, that there's a wall of maps of the local area and beyond, all over the world, really. The wall is covered in scrap and scribbled notes. I'll try to like piece together some of the things that they say. If you have followed directions to this point, it talks about a lake, bone dry, a hatchet that points to a house. A middle-aged woman will be waiting. If her son has died in the last year, leave immediately and go back to the last house. Make sure she doesn't follow you. A man who can steal memories by looking at you. The guide in Fronsdale is a fraud. And Eve heads back into the main room. She's just going on. I would be running, screaming. She follows the pinpricks of light, but the door no longer has bullet holes in it. A man is standing in front of her, blocking the door. He says, "You're not supposed to be here." And he sounds scared. She apologizes, tries to leave. The man stumbles back. He's filled with anxiety.
And he's like an old man with like a weird scar on his face, and she can only see half of his face as he's kind of trying to hide from her. It's so scary.
Yeah, he says, "Just please leave." He says, "Please." And he has this big scar. He's an old man. She's almost gone. And he says, "Wait." Can you hear that?
What is that?
It's supposedly my neighbor.
Sarah, run!
No, it was like 11 in the morning when I finished this, and I was like terrified. Okay, so they're both backing away from each other. They're both stumbling around. They're terrified to see each other. And he says, "Just please leave." She's almost gone. He says, "Wait. Those people in your house, that's not what they look like. The family, that's not what they look like. You need to be careful. Get them to leave." He stomps off. She walks away and she takes a few steps and she realizes that her house is like right there, so close. And I'm running again. I'm already trying to get back out of town, but she sees a pale blue light again in the woods. And I'm just like, "You just run."
I think that she realizes that the pale blue light was probably coming from that cabin that night.
Okay. Is that what it is? Okay.
The porthole. Yeah.
Yeah. She looked back and she saw that pale blue light again. And you put together, she realizes it came from that house. Okay. So that makes sense.
So I realize that this is going to be made into a movie, or I believe it will be, but I don't know if I personally can watch that movie.
And what's so funny is like, objectively, not a whole bunch has happened. Like everything's explainable up until this point. I feel like
no one has died.
Right.
There's no one actively trying to like kill anyone that we know of. But there's creepy old men. There's like slender men. There's a potential like escaped. Oh, wait, we haven't got there yet. It just gets worse. We'll just keep
It's getting worse. Yes. So the chapter ends with a document labeled hoax. And it's just like sort of a jumbled mess of these different notes. So I'll break it down again if I can. Lyle H. has written a note about Old House. And we've heard this reference a couple times now. It mentions seawort. It sort of changes over to seawort, a plant native to the UK. Then it says that at first the author didn't really care that the fern was non-native to the area. But he says when coupled with the other non-native plants that pop up around Old House, site U17, he calls it, it's more interesting. They have a photo of a lynx in front of the house and a document that then dives into a section about mythical ants, Gelsheimer ants, that were discovered by a mythical person. And we learn a little bit about how the common house ant was spread from Australia to the rest of the world. Then we head into a footnote about how modern day entomologists question the legitimacy of all of this, the ants and the person who discovered them. Then it says everything in this paragraph is the complete fabrication of the author after that. So we're just sort of barking up trees.
But do we think that those ants are related to the first ants that she found in the basement that were trying to push between the tiles?
Yeah, I think that it's all sort of related. It feels like it's like they've said, right? Just like Allison was saying, that things in the house are just changing. they're not necessarily completely disappearing. I feel like they're just changing. And I think that section about how the common house ant spread and changed as it went around the world, I think that that's trying to explain that a little bit. It then lists the most terrifying descriptions ever. Host, which is a person who has been trapped in the house or willfully residing. If trapped longer than a month, cannot leave, it says in parentheses. Guest, a person trapped in the house less than 1 year. There's guide, someone who can bring people in and safely bring them back out again. Tourist, a person who enters with the guide less than 1 week, then says most tourists become guests unwillingly and then later become hosts.
It's like a terrible pyramid scheme.
Yeah, I felt like this was like the rules to Jumanji or something. Like it's just like this game nobody wants to play. Everybody has to know the rules. So there's a trespasser, a person who accidentally enters old house, and it just only refers to it ever as old house. Anchor, which is a trickster or a specter. It's a non-human entity. Most are dangerous. Some feed on terror or confusion or chaos. A hatch is any hole or opening that can be used to enter old house. Shortcut is exactly that. It's used to jump locations and it's extremely high risk. It seems like whoever is writing these descriptions is someone who has actively worked in and out of the house, escaping situations, and is like very familiar with how it works.
It almost seems like it's not just the one house either. Like there's these different
Right.
locations that you can, like, because they were talking about like jumping from one to the next. And
Right.
this guide is a phony and this lady, you know what I mean?
Yeah, a hook is a room or section of the house that is impossible to escape without ritual replacement.
What does that mean?
Then I know, I have a feeling. It talks about the side effects of being in the house. Some say it's similar to radiation poisoning with ringing in their ears, vomiting, and the like. The author of this section of the book then references a book where it goes into more detail about the other strange occurrences around the house and to send questions to a Gmail account. In the footnotes, it says that this is all just the ramblings of people with too much free time and that the Gmail account has never replied to any of the probing by whoever is writing this. Yes, and so that's the end of the chapter. The next chapter is called Relic, and it opens up, and I had a question about this. The chapter opens up, and Eve no longer has Charlie's locket. Is it because she lost it in her pocket, or did she just leave it at the house? It mentions that she's lost it.
Right. I don't quite remember.
It was like one of these things where she was walking through the woods, and then she like reached in her pocket, and it wasn't there. And it doesn't really like explain where she left it or what happened to it. So it seems she's arrived back at the house and it seems like the house is empty, that they have gone, that they're no longer there. The front door is locked. And so she is about to break in another way when Thomas opens the door. Of course, they're still there. They were just about to leave, but they didn't want to leave the door unlocked because there's a lot of eccentric people that come out of the woods, says Thomas.
Who came out of the woods randomly.
An eccentric person that came out of the woods. And Eve is almost immediately having a hard time not thinking about how many times Thomas was stabbed with a ballpoint pen. So she's definitely having a hard time with that memory. He says the roads are too bad to leave, and Eve is just getting really pissed off at this point. She tells Thomas that she has tire chains, and Thomas says that they probably won't fit, but she says they're universal, and she decides to go up to the attic to get the tire chains. They're all just kind of like surprised that she would be willing to donate tire chains, but I think that she's just ready for them to get out of the house. At this time, Paige is like in and out of the room and she calls Jenny in like quite viciously. And you kind of start to notice that Paige's shiny veneer is starting to crumble. Eve is now hearing Charlie's voice in her head telling her to go get the chains so that they can leave. So she watches Paige and Jenny leave the room and then heads upstairs. Eve is remembering the old man's warning as she stares at Paige down the hallway. I also wonder what Paige actually looks like because she's described as being this quite demure, serene woman. When Eve realizes that the wallpaper that was ripped has been repaired, the paper that was over the dumbbell waiter, and
The dumb waiter, my little gym babe.
what did I call
Dumbbell.
I put that in there? No, I did just write dumb waiter. Okay, good. Dumbbell. So the paper over the dumb waiter, and she is like really closely looking at the paper, how it could be repaired, and it's like expertly repaired. There's no rip in it. It doesn't even look like the wall around it has been disturbed at all. And she's like vaguely wondering to herself how that's even possible. But again, she just decides to go up to the attic. I think at this point, I would be like loudly voicing my concerns because things like wallpaper not, looking like they're being ripped, that's just impossible. I would start questioning my own sanity.
Yeah, and especially because they have no tools or supplies to fix it. How would they have?
This is crazy. But I like how there's a moment where she's like, Thomas must have done this. Yeah. So she's back to the attic and she's up there. She sees a random dog kennel up there and it's got like expired treats and a bowl for Buckley. So
We
that
knew it! Buckley and Shiloh.
yeah,
They're
exactly.
in cahoots.
That's right. Oh.
The real antagonists of the story.
My goodness, I never considered the Australian Shepherd. Okay, so just in time, her flashlight quits working and she slaps it back up and it continues, but she's like, it's kind of like flickering in and out. And she continues onto the chains, but finds a box of Charlotte stuff. It's just labeled Charlotte stuff, donate, which is Charlie's legal name, we learn. She finds a camera, a 35 millimeter Pentax that Charlie loves, which reminds Eve of a memory of when Charlie had a gallery downtown. And she sort of like has this very detailed memory where Charlie painted the walls downtown. They played music. It was this really nice event. She even put up the photo that she took of Eve that is inside the locket. But Charlie doesn't take photos since her dad died years later. And that's who gave her the camera. And so there's this moment where we sort of learn a little bit of Charlie's backstory. But also, what is that box doing there?
Yeah, and it's so weird that this sentimental token that she had from her father would be put in a donation box.
Right. There's this moment where Eve's like, why would this be here? But like, she also thinks, okay, I guess Charlie just put it up here. So she hears Thomas downstairs, like leaving, and she looks out the little porthole window. I guess like he's like walking with luggage and he starts like freaking out, like slapping his face and screaming. It only lasts a few seconds. And then he stops and he like looks around to see if anybody was looking and composes himself and then smokes a cigarette. I'd like pull the ladder up.
I just like love it.
I would not find myself in these situations. Okay, here we go. She sees a little note carved into the wall where she is looking out, and it says, "Don't forget what house you are in." It's just so unnerving, so ominous and weird.
Especially after that last chapter, it's like, don't forget which house. Is this one of the many old houses? And could you possibly forget and become a host unwillingly?
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah, nothing's really happening quickly. It's coming at you so fast because you're like putting it together. And like, we just learned that there were possibly other houses. And now we're learning that they're all like morphing into each other and you'll never leave. She finally finds the tire chains and hears a sound behind her. It's like jagged fingernails on metal, she says, and it's painful to hear. Then it stops with a thud. And she realizes it's the dumbwaiter out the window.
From the basement to the attic to the basement to the attic. Like, where does the creepy monster need to be?
Yeah, exactly. It's so perfect.
It makes me want to cry. I'm so stressed out.
I know. It's so stressful. Dumbwaiters are so stressful.
Who knew?
She approaches, in the crazy turn of events, she approaches the dumbwaiter, which I would never do, and finds no one. She thinks one of the children must be playing with it, but she sees footprints that don't belong to a child. And they lead out of the dumbwaiter and to an area that is between Eve and the exit of the attic. The flashlight, of course, goes out perfectly at this moment. And she hits it again and it flares light all up, like illuminating the entire attic, which is so scary, and then goes out. And she gets like really upset and throws away her only weapon by just throwing it across the attic. Hits a wall, but it's sort of flickering, but she can't really see anything with it. She's now in basically pitch black and she's inching forward, blind, trying to breathe like me. We're both trying to breathe and she can hear the ladder closing at the end of the attic as she's walking. But then just as she goes for it, it slams shut. naturally. She tries to tune into all of her senses. She's, basically having a panic attack, as we all would. And she's in the complete darkness, and she's trying to touch each of her senses to calm herself down. So she's thinking, okay, I'm in complete darkness. I can't see anything. The smell is musty, very musty. Then she's like, okay, what can I hear? And she can hear the rolling of the flashlight that she threw, maybe like 10 feet away. It's flickering. It rolls and comes to a stop. And then she sees a shape standing, a figure, a tall, slender darkness, motionless. It takes a step. A step, Tess. It did. Its skin is jaundiced with dirt under the toenails. It skitters. It skitters forward.
Skitters.
Not skittering.
No.
It's a woman. Most terrifyingly, it's a woman in a hospital gown. Her face is hidden behind a peekaboo, like a child, she describes it. And she describes her calloused feet scraping as she steps. No, I'd be God. I'd be just, good night.
Delete me from this conversation.
Yeah, goodbye. I want you to know that I was reading this, and it was Saturday night, and I went out into the garage, and we found that there was a possum in our garage. And so there was much skittering going on in the garage while I was listening to this. And I just, of course, things like that always happen. Life imitating art. The woman is approaching Eve, and Eve is crawling with the scraping behind her, and she's pounding on the floor where the hatch is to get down. And finally it like pops open, and she's saved. The ladder falls down, and Thomas is standing there, and she flies out and hits her head and is knocked out at the end of the chapter. And that one didn't end with a document at the end. So it was just, that's how it ended. Yeah. Good
Wow.
luck to you.
My goodness. Here we go. Yeah, this story, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so chapter 15 is a short one, and it's called Light. It's a very short chapter, and again, we're taken out of the present moment. The chapter starts, you have to hide, and then talks about a girl who wakes in a small room, no larger than a walk-in closet. There's a window in the room that overlooks a pond, and she doesn't know how long she's been there. It might be months, it might be years. And then we're on to chapter 16, which is called Thief. Chapter 16 starts with Eve regaining consciousness. She's in the living room on the couch with Paige knitting by the fireplace, and Jenny and Newton are playing with Legos beside her. Where did they get the Legos?
What is going on? Who are these people?
Right.
Why are they moving in?
Yes.
No. You're knitting? What are you doing? Leave.
Thomas is nowhere to be seen. But when Paige sees that Eve is waking up and asks if she's okay, Thomas is suddenly back in the room as well. Eve is pretty disoriented, and she isn't really sure what's happened. And Paige lets her know that she was up in the attic and she started screaming. She sounded terrified, and then she fell out of the attic and hit her head and passed out. They helped her downstairs, but she passed out again on the couch. Thomas lets her know that she's been out for like 10 to 15 minutes. And Eve is really upset and can't believe that they wouldn't call an ambulance, which is when they remind her again that they're on that digital fast. Eve circles back to the fact that she was screaming, and Paige tells her that she was asking for help, which triggers Eve's memory of what she saw in the attic, and she lets them know that there's an intruder in the attic, which seems to freak out the kids. So Thomas tells them to go play in the other room, but to keep Jenny close. Eve reiterates what she saw. A woman in a hospital gown. She definitely didn't seem friendly. She definitely didn't seem like a squatter. And Eve even asks if it could possibly have been Thomas's sister, Allison. But Thomas says that that's not possible, but doesn't elaborate further as to why that's not possible.
Yeah, which would be really helpful right now.
Right. Is she dead? Is she institutionalized?
How can you be certain?
Paige suggests calling the police with the neighbor's phone. But Thomas doesn't want to escalate the situation and says he'll just go up and take a look. Don't forget the tire chains, Paige tells him. What?
Yeah.
Thomas goes off to the attic, and Paige resumes knitting when Eve notices that she's rocking back and forth in a red rocking chair. Nice chair, she says to Paige. And Paige explains that she has this back injury and the motion helps. So Thomas brought the chair out of the truck. Eve is annoyed and doesn't really care about Paige's injury. She just is kind of sick of them slowly moving their stuff into her house. Like you mentioned earlier. Like,
what is going on? There's no time to knit. There is not.
Paige ends up apologizing about what she said at dinner, when she was picking apart Eve and Charlie's relationship. And then she goes on to tell Eve that it's actually Thomas that brought Paige to the church. So it turns out that Paige and Thomas met each other at a soup kitchen. Paige was there for court-mandated community service, and Thomas was there with his church group, and the rest is history, I guess. Not what I would have suspected, right?
Yeah, I think Eve kind of has like a little feeling about that in the beginning when she saw Paige's tattoo.
Anyway, Thomas comes back downstairs, calm, casual. He says he didn't see anyone, but he did find Eve's flashlight. Eve mentions that there were footprints up there, but Thomas says he didn't see anything and he looked everywhere. But the corner of his mouth twitches as he's saying this, so Eve is convinced he's lying.
She's always convinced he's lying.
Eve gets the sudden impulse to get away from this family, and she hears the old man from the cabin in her head saying, "That's not what they look like." And so she's trying to move past Thomas, who's trying to calm her down and get her to sit down, and he actually genuinely seems concerned for her. When all of a sudden, Eve hears a familiar text tone chiming from upstairs. Finally, she's found her phone. She pushes past Thomas and tells him not to effing follow her. And she races up the stairs to go get her phone. She hears the tone once again coming from the study, but when she goes into the room, she sees Kai silhouetted by the stained glass window. And I don't know if we pointed out the stained glass window earlier, but there's this really ornate stained glass window in the study that depicts an apple tree. And, Eve already, as Sarah described earlier in earlier episodes, Eve already has this kind of negative feeling about Kai being like a little snide, like troublemaker. So it's no wonder that he's up here with her phone. So she sees Kai and he's fumbling with her cracked screened phone, trying to get the ringer to turn off. Oh, and also, Sarah, I wanted to point out the apple tree. Do you think that we have another biblical reference here with Eden and Eve?
Yeah, definitely. Just stained glass, of course, would be a reference to like the church, it feels like, and just how prevalent it is, how often they're like looking at it. It seems like it's a real like archetype,
But anyway, Eve is really pissed off and she tells Kai to hand over the phone, and he seems really confused. But Eve is not having it, and she lunges at Kai to physically pull the phone out of his hands, and the two of them get into like a sort of tug of war situation. "Give me back my effing phone," Eve yells at this child. And at that moment, Shiloh comes in and she starts circling around the two of them as they're going back and forth, and she ends up biting Kai on the ankle. Kai drops the phone. The rest of the family rushes into the room, and Shiloh won't let go of Kai, even though he's trying to shake her off, and Eve is obviously yelling at her to stop. Kai eventually kicks Shiloh twice, which makes the dog finally let go of him with a whimper, and she runs off downstairs. It is complete silence in the room with all eyes on Eve. She's never done that before, Eve explains. "That psycho and her dog attacked me," says Kai. "Well, Kai stole my phone." Eve picks up the phone to show them the evidence, and wait, it's actually not her phone at all. It turns out that Kai snuck his phone back after their little digital fast, which he apologizes for, but his parents are more concerned with the bite right now. The skin is broken. They want to know if Shiloh's up to date on her shots. They definitely know that they're going to need to have this bite looked at. And Paige is absolutely irate at this point, saying that she wants the dog put down. And as the family's getting ready to leave to take Kai to see a doctor, Paige lets Eve know that she's going to be hearing from them, essentially threatening legal action. And then Paige takes Kai's phone back before joining the rest of her family. So Eve is all alone in the room, feeling like she could cry, but she knows she needs to go and find Shiloh to make she's okay. But before she's leaving the room, she notices something. The stained glass window in the study, it's gone, replaced with an ordinary 4-paneled clear glass window.
It's not possible.
It's not possible. Also, it's something that the author does. I feel like they use the same text over and over. Something was different. Something's changed. Something was wrong.
Right.
And it just kind of keeps adding to this like sense of like everything is like shifting. Your reality is like, you feel like as the reader, you're kind of losing grasp on what's happened, what's real.
Right. Yeah. It was like what you referenced last week, like, and then I noticed the lamp or something, that concept,
Right. So anyway, Eve is clearly freaked out by this revelation. She goes closer. She's inspecting the window because she just cannot believe her eyes. But sure enough, it's a regular old window. No sawdust or fresh sealant. There's no signs of it being recently installed. And in fact, it blends in perfectly with the age-worn room. Eve decides it's time to find Shiloh and get out of there.
So scary.
I swear, like, if we make a review episode on this, the title should just be like, I hated it, 5 stars.
Yeah, exactly. Hated every minute. 5 stars.
So Eve sees the family walking down the path to get to their moving van, and she begins to call out for Shiloh. Eve hears skittering, more skittering. Eve hears a skittering of footfalls, followed by a shrill whimper, and realizes the basement door is half open. She hears another whimper, and without a second thought, she grabs her flashlight and starts descending the steps when she hears another whimper, but this time it comes from behind her, back up in the kitchen.
No.
She turns around and Shiloh is standing at the top of the stairs staring at her. My notes just simply say, please make it stop.
Yeah. So who's there?
It's like a skinwalker trying to lure her down into the basement. What was that one? There was one term. It wasn't like the host. It wasn't
The specter.
the specter. It's like a specter.
Yeah.
So then Eve hears that same creaky metallic noise of the dumbwaiter, and she runs back upstairs, locks the door, grabs Shiloh, gives her a quick inspection. She looks okay, and her last thought is, get out of here now. And then the chapter ends with a partial report of lost hikers, with a note saying, not sure if there's a connection here, but it may be worth looking into. Basically, 5 hikers went missing after going off the hiking trail in a provincial park in Canada. 2 months later, only one of the hikers was found alive. The surviving hiker, Erin, a 24-year-old woman, said that she and her companions got lost in a blizzard and stumbled across a, quote, 1950s-style hotel. She went on to say that they sheltered in the hotel for weeks, but one by one they were picked off by, quote-unquote, an unseen force. And they were, quote-unquote, dragged through doorways to different places.
No.
It's giving back rooms.
Yeah, back rooms. No.
Search and rescue goes out to sweep the area several times, but never finds this mysterious hotel.
So we think that old house can take the form of a hotel.
Yeah, or even a hatch at the bottom of an empty lake bed.
Yes. And if her son has died within the year.
What does it mean? Please.
It's so scary.
Make it stop, Marcus. Why are you doing that?
What's wrong with you? 5 stars.
5 stars.
Okay. We open up the next chapter. It's called Reunion. And Thomas is actually driving away, finally. But as he is leaving the property, Charlie is pulling up and the 2 cars stop. And it looks as if Thomas is telling Charlie a very interesting story that Charlie is just like eating up. And that is making Eve very uncomfortable. Paranoid even.
Eve, paranoid? No.
Never. Couldn't be her. Charlie then drives up the remaining distance to the house and Thomas continues on and he is actually leaving. Eve immediately asked why Charlie left that morning without telling her, because I can't believe that it's only been 1 day since that happened. And Charlie responds that she did and that Eve gave her a thumbs up before she left. And now Eve conveniently suddenly remembers that maybe that did happen. And Eve, the unreliable narrator, continues. Eve tells Charlie she can't go back to the house. And what did Thomas tell her? Charlie basically recounts the morning perfectly, just as Thomas told her. But this makes Eve even more upset because it felt like a lot more foreboding and dangerous for Eve and malicious than what Thomas made it sound like, probably.
I feel like it's similar to like me explaining this book to my husband, being like, and there was a door that was slightly open.
Right. Yeah. And there may have been a mentally unwell homeless woman in the attic.
And at one point, the guy, he's just standing really straight with the flashlight pointed at the floor.
And they do not have cell phones. Do you understand? Do you understand? It turns for me. It's about to get so scary for me. I was so terrified. Okay. Eve asks Charlie if so she just cuts right to the chase. She asks Charlie if the upstairs window is stained glass with an apple tree, and Charlie confirms that yes, it is. And Eve tells her that the window is no longer stained glass in the study. It's different. So Charlie muses, okay, I'll go look at it. And if it is different, then at least we're going crazy together. And then Charlie kind of makes this joke, which I thought was so funny, that maybe the family's entire plan was to just steal the window all along. Like they were an expert family of window installers. Maybe that explains it more than anything else at this point. So Eve comments that the truck is a speck now. She can see all the way down the road and they're almost gone, but they decide to stay at another place for the night anyways. They're not going to stay at the house. So Charlie says that she just needs to go back to the house to get her stuff to leave, and Eve begs her not to, but she says that she'll just be real quick, famous last words. Charlie then heads into the house. Eve is watching through the windows, but finds herself staring up at that attic window again. And I wrote at this point that this character needs to seriously calm down. Like, it's so scary. She's just like so paranoid at this point. Every single thing is a boogeyman at this point. Eve watches the front door get blown closed, of course, by the wind, but can like sort of see through the windows and is watching Charlie packing her stuff and like going in and out of where Eve can see. Charlie then pretty quickly actually reappears on the stoop, and Charlie confirms that the window has changed, that it is no longer a stained glass, and Eve is spooked beyond reason and says that the family must have taken it.
Really quick, when Eve is waiting for Charlie to go get her things, Shiloh's waiting in the truck with Eve, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I have a question later.
Shiloh stays in the truck the whole time. Yep. The ending document of this chapter, the random document, is an old house document. It's a video of an interrogation. A boy named Andrew Melvin and an officer, Kieran, at the Broward County Police Department. They're trying to figure out what happened to Andrew's friend, Peter, who is in a catatonic state. Andrew was the last one to see Peter normally. Officer Kieran asks why they broke into the house, and Andrew says that they were dared by the other boys. There's 3 of them. Peter and Andrew, 5 altogether. Peter and Andrew were the 2 that went into the house. They went into the basement and they walk around for approximately 10 minutes or so. Then Peter sees something that Andrew cannot see. Andrew says that Peter stops breathing and points his flashlight down to the floor, like how Thomas was that one night. And then they hear a voice that says, "My name isn't, just my name isn't." Andrew tries to get Peter to leave, but will not. Andrew hears footsteps and he runs, but before he leaves, he takes the flashlight from Peter and he says he had to wrench it out of his hand, that Peter was just there motionless. He then runs 20 minutes to the neighbor's house. I guess the other boys must not have been outside. Peter is catatonic when the police arrive and they search the house but found no one. In fact, the window that Andrew says that they broke to get into the house is intact, as if no one has been in the house. There's no footsteps, including Andrew's. In fact, none of the boys are able to be located. Even the school doesn't have records of them, including Andrew. Officer Kieran thinks Andrew is lying about all of it, but then Andrew looks around the room and it's described in the video as being this very strange moment, as if something or someone else jumps into Andrew's body, takes a look around the room, and then leaves. And we're left with Andrew's childlike fear at the end. I have full body goosebumps right now, down to my toes.
I hated this.
Andrew says he doesn't want to be put away for being crazy. Officer Kieran lies and reassures him, says, "No, that's not going to happen." Andrew says he is starting to remember things that haven't happened as the video ends. A follow-up document says none of this has ever been corroborated. This video is missing. It has been wiped from the internet everywhere, even the Wayback Archives, which I thought was really interesting. That must be, I was going to look that up. That must be like a internet archive.
Yeah, the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, the Wayback Machine. Yeah. The author of the document himself has seen the video and knows it exists. That's where the recounting comes from in the story. He says that analog copies may exist, but the author notes that he has never gotten a hold of them. He does not consider himself to be OHA. And OHA is an acronym that we hear a couple times in these documents, standing for Old House Archivist, a group of people documenting the occurrences with and around Old House.
And we find out that there's like 2 sects. There's like the OHAs and then the NOHAs, because there's a new Old House Archivist group. Like, I wanted to circle back to the basement where they're in, because there's a couple details that I found really fascinating. Yeah. So they said that they were walking around this basement and they found a door that looked completely brand new. And like, it didn't look like it fit with the rest of.
Right.
And so they open the door and then they describe it as being like a hospital hallway with like bluish green walls and doors on either side. And then his friend could see something that the other guy couldn't see, but the hallway, the way that it was described, and I could just be pulling at stuff, but it reminded me of the hallway at Heather's house.
Yeah. There's a lot of parts of Heather's house that I felt like we saw when we were in there. I felt like a lot of the rooms were really similar. Even the layout is really similar to the cabin that she went into as well, with the long straight hallway.
Doors to other places.
It seems like it. Yeah. I do remember them saying that they went through a door. I was just like this the whole time. Why are you down here? All right. The next chapter is called Getaway. Eve's forehead is pressed against the glass as they drive down the mountain. Eve feels something is wrong, and this isn't anything new at this point. Our girl is uncomfy. Eve and Charlie discuss if Paige will sue them, and Charlie says they will countersue for the window, which I thought was really random and fun. Eve falls asleep and wakes up at the Kettle Creek Motel just as they are pulling in. They walk into the front lobby and no one is there. They find a clerk, but she is reading a book and she's not really interested in helping clock in or check in. And they eventually get the room, but only after she upcharges them quite heavily.
And two things about this hotel. One, I thought that Eve thought that it was abandoned and closed when they first pulled into the town. And two, I was like, so there is a hotel. Why did this family spend the night?
Yeah, she says that she thought it was closed on the way into town. But yeah, I didn't think that until you just mentioned why didn't they stay at either Heather's house that they knew or the motel? It doesn't make any sense. It's because they're specters.
It's because they're hosts.
They're host specters. Eve is on edge and they walk out of the lobby. A police car pulls up into the lot, but then just turns around and leaves. So there are police. They settle into the room and once again talk with each other about if Eve is going crazy. And Charlie says, well, then I must be going crazy too. And Eve says, no, you don't understand. So much more has happened, and tries to explain to Charlie all the events from the day. But Charlie just reassures her and says, if you're going crazy, I'd be the first one to point it out. And Eve buys that. She says, yeah, that's probably true.
I like how gentle Charlie seems to be being with her in this moment, because it seemed a bit out of character for me. I still thought that Charlie would be like a bit annoyed and like, you're overreacting, but it seems like she's really taking the time to like meet her where she's at.
Yeah, it's almost as if Thomas said something that, was like nice about Eve, like maybe she's had a rough day or something along those lines.
Yeah, or maybe the whole window thing too. Charlie's like, oh, well, you know what? Maybe I'm being a little harsh on her.
Yeah, probably. But afterward, in Eve's mind, she hears a voice that says Charlie isn't Charlie. And the voice is no longer Mo. Instead, it's a voice Eve calls all-knowing and ancient. And it says, this isn't your Charlie.
Yeah, my heart was actually starting to break for them in this chapter.
Yeah. Eve remembers that Thomas told her that Allison also thought the members of her family were being replaced, and so she would test them by asking them questions about the past. So Eve asked Charlie how they met, and she wants extreme detail. Charlie describes wanting to see Spirited Away in theaters in Rochester. When she got there with her friends, Eve was all alone, and that she was also the prettiest girl in the theater. Eve starts recalling the memory with her as well, that she had been stood up on this particular movie date by her boyfriend at the time, who was the lead guitarist of a worship band named Chet. And I just felt like that was such a rich backstory.
He wasn't the lead guitarist. He was a percussion. And he did like he did like the he did like the.
Isn't that what she called him, the lead guitarist?
No, it was like percussion. He's like lead.
Oh, was it lead percussionist?
Yeah.
I just thought it was such like a rich backstory. It was just like hilarious to me. Percussionist. And I didn't know what it was. I was just
like the mallets and stuff. I think they mentioned.
Oh, was it? So Eve seems to be happy with Charlie's recounting of the memory, and they decide to watch TV and cuddle up until Eve falls asleep. Eve awakes to a phone call from Charlie's phone. She's asleep. It's 3:06 in the morning. So Eve takes the phone into the bathroom for some reason. And she answers it. And on the other end of the line is Charlie, she thinks. But she pops the door open and she can see Charlie laying there asleep. But the voice on the phone says, Eve, she isn't me. Earlier when I went to the house, I'm still here. Who's ever with you? She isn't me. And the dog, it isn't Shiloh. Shiloh is, and the phone cuts. Then Charlie tells her to get in the car and drive away, to never go back to the house. Eve hears footsteps, laughter, or maybe crying on the other end of the phone. Then the line ends. Eve opens the door, and Charlie's up now, backlit by the TV for ultimate creepiness. Charlie asks what she is doing, and Eve lies, saying she was calling the contractor about a miscommunication on what day he should be there. Charlie doesn't buy it because it's 3 a.m. So Charlie turns on the light, and Eve sees that Charlie's tattoo on her hand is missing. And so Eve bolts for the door, gets in the truck, and tries to drive away. Charlie is chasing her and sort of like pleading with her, crying. And the new voice in Eve's head says Charlie's going to put her in an asylum. Eve turns the truck on and nearly hits Charlie while she's leaving the lot.
Yeah, my heart was truly breaking for this couple because if this is just a psychotic break, how heartbreaking would that be to go through with your partner?
Yeah, right. It's this like thin little line where you're watching Eve go from like, oh my gosh. I mean, if I answered a phone like that and heard my loved one's voice telling me that the person I'm with isn't real, that would drive me just to do anything to get that person back. I would be like, what do you mean? And I understand that kind of, they can do that kind of stuff with AI now, obviously, but like there was just like a mixture of so many things that happened that it feels like it could be this true body snatcher situation.
Right. And not having the tattoo on her finger that's missing.
Right.
It's not a perfect copy. You know what I mean? Terrifying. But the thing with Shiloh, too, that made me wonder, was the specter the Shiloh at the top of the stairs then, and real Shiloh was still in the basement?
Must have been what it was then.
Oh, I
And
hate
she
it.
just like fell for it right away. Like it was that quick. So at first, as she goes screeching out of the lot, she was going to go and just drive away and go anywhere but here. But she decides that she can't leave Charlie there, the real Charlie and the real Shiloh. So Eve has decided to save her family at any cost, but is also running out of gas as the chapter ends. So the document at the end of the chapter is translated from a Norwegian author, which talks about pareidolia, which is a phenomenon where the brain sees familiar objects in patterns, like seeing faces in tree bark or hearing voices in white noise. The prevalence of pareidolia is linked to anxiety, and you are more likely, of course, to see predators in patterns when you are stressed, which is just sort of linked to the human condition, I imagine. But I wanted to speak on what you were saying about like, because you're on this like thin ride with Eve, but when you hear that Charlie is chasing her, at least for me, when I heard that Charlie was pleading with her, that's when it was like, oh my gosh, she's having a psychotic break or something, and she's just extremely stressed out and suffering from pareidolia linked to her anxiety. Yeah.
Really quickly, we are so close to finishing this book. And just for fun, what is your best case scenario ending for this book? Do you want me to go first so you can think?
Yes, that is such a good question. The question is best case scenario. So the best case. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I was just thinking about this while you were talking earlier.
Yeah. Such a good question.
When you were talking about all of the different people and roles that they play, like I would just love like some sort of this is so embarrassing. Some sort of like a macho mountain man who is, what are they called? Guides? Someone that can take people in and out of the old house without
Right.
getting them trapped. If he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I've been here before, I've done this before, I'll help you little ladies."
Right.
And he just kind
Yeah.
of like busts down the door, or like mountain woman. I don't really care if there's just like some guide, or maybe it's like a zany, like scientific sort of guy who's like been studying an old house for the phenomena for so long, and he knows how to go through and
Yeah.
get people out of it, and he can save them somehow.
Yeah. Like a journey to the center of the earth kind of a vibe,
Yeah.
like we're going to go through this. Yeah, that would be great. I think it would be so cool because we would get to see like the different worlds and like how they all related. It kind of reminded me because of the hospital and just the mental health aspect. It kind of reminded me of that movie Gothica.
Okay. It's been so
With Halle Berry. It's like literally 30 years old or something. But it's like there was this terrible thing that was happening at this facility, and it happened to this other girl, but then it's like being reimagined for her character so that she's seeing like little aspects of it, and she's like kind of going through it again, even though she's not really living through that. And then you find out at the end that it was like this pattern that gets repeated until it's found, and released. And so I think that I think that's the most likely ending for this, is that we're going to hear about how Heather's related and the old man is related. And like, I think it could be something like that. And then we find out this like evil thing that happened in the house. It's probably going to be similar to what Allison did to Thomas, I would think. And that's what's going to play out. I just don't know if we're going to see it repeat in real time, what Allison did to Thomas. Like, will they go back to the house and will that play out again where someone who loves someone else stabbed them?
I really hope it's not like Eve, especially with her almost hitting Charlie with the truck.
Right.
Some sort of foreshadowing for that.
Yeah, I hope not too. Or even Shiloh with the bite,
Oh, yeah.
something like that. If Shiloh, yeah. Yeah, so I think that's like the most likely, but I think like the coolest thing would be like someone like you said coming in and sort of knowing the ropes so well that they're like, we're going to dismantle this once and for all. And like,
Right.
they're going to kind of like shine the light in. And I think that would be like the most uplifting ending that you could have
I
for it.
fear we only have so much left in the book, and that's probably not enough time and space for that to happen. But
Heather just doesn't think she's not going to step up. She doesn't look like she's going to step up.
she doesn't seem like the like kicking doors down type of lady.
She doesn't. I mean, she could surprise us. You know, she could be the old woman in the what if the old woman's just trying to save you, you know? It could be something like that. So
We're gonna have to keep reading.
we're going to have to keep reading. It's so much fun. I would have never picked this book for myself, and it's just been so much fun.
I'm having a blast. Really quick, I just wanted to tell you that I started following this author on our Instagram.
Yeah.
And he's posted some things. There seems to be now like Reddit threads and like discourses talking about Old House and Old House archivists and theories and stuff like this. I haven't jumped into that yet, but I am so curious. If anybody out there has spent time on those subreddits, please let us know the theories about Old House. Without spoiling the ending, our next episode, we're going to be finishing the book, so all bets are off. But I need more. This is so juicy.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's so great. I can't wait to check out the profile. I love when the fans get so into something that it takes on a life of its own. I'm sure the author's really happy too. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Into other books by this author, because I think that they give the right amount of detail that makes everything so eye-opening.
Absolutely.
You're like walking through their world, like, what's this? What's there? What's this? Yeah, it's like a fun house or something of horror.
The perfect October read.
Next week, we're finishing the book and hopefully putting some of these puzzle pieces together. Do you think we'll figure out what is really happening here? Or do you think we'll get an ambiguous ending? Let us know.
Thank you for spending part of your day with us, especially if you made it all the way to the end of this episode. And if you did make it all the way to the end of the episode and you're watching on YouTube, leave us some sort of Halloween-themed emoji in the comments, just to let us know you made it.
Before you go, don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you.
We hope you're enjoying October so far, and let us know about the scariest book you've ever read.
Till next time, keep the basement door locked, keep the attic ladder closed, keep your books open, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Basically Bookish Pod.
Happy reading!
Happy reading!